Hello friends, it's me Heather Harris. This is episode 2 of the Heather Harris podcast, and today we are going to be talking about Omayra Sanchez. And as you can see by the thumbnail, you may think this is straight from a horror movie, but no, it happened in real life. And I'm sorry if you guys hear any background noises. I don't have any equipment to stop noise from coming through, so you might hear people who are in the streets and stuff like that. I'm so sorry for that. But let's get into the story. I hope you guys will be entertained, and I hope you guys enjoy. So, November 1985, in Armero, Colombia, there was a massive mudslide brought on by the eruption of a nearby volcano. 13-year-old Omayra Sanchez was buried in a giant vat of debris and neck-deep water. Rescue efforts were futile, and after 3 days, trapped up to her waist with mud, debris, and water, the Colombian teenager died. French photographer Frank Foutier, and again another French name, I'm not sure if I am pronouncing it correct, but you guys can naturally tell me in the comment section if I am pronouncing it correct, who stayed by the dying girl's side until she drew her last breath, captured the horrifying ordeal in real time. This is the tragic story of Omayra Sanchez. The photographer, sorry about that. I don't know why, but I want to do a podcast and I can't even talk properly. Have you ever heard such nonsense? But if I make mistakes in it, I am so sorry, and I hope you guys wouldn't be mean to me about it, because I am a shy soft marshmallow and you will hurt my feelings. So, photographer Frank Foutier arrived in Bogota 2 days after the eruption. After a 5-hour drive and a 2.5-hour walk, he finally made it to Armero, who he planned to capture the rescue effort on the ground. But when he got there, conditions were so much worse than he had ever imagined. Instead of an organized fluid operation to save many of the residents that were trapped under debris, Foutier encountered chaos and desperation. All around, hundreds of people were trapped. Rescuers were having difficulty reaching them. I could hear people screaming for help, and then silence, and eerie silence, he told the BBC 2 decades after the horrifying disaster. It was very haunting. So, I never experienced a flood or a landslide of that magnitude, but could imagine people screaming for help and then silence. You know that something terrible have happened to those people. They died and finally succumbed to their injury. Amid the chaos, a farmer took him to a little girl who needed help, and the little girl was Omayra. The farmer told him that the girl had been trapped under her destroyed house for 3 days. Her name was Omayra Sanchez, as I mentioned before. Poor child. Rescue volunteers from the Red Cross and local residents tried to pull her out, but something below the water surrounding her had pinned her legs, making her unable to move. Meanwhile, the water engulfing Sanchez got higher and higher, partly due to the continuous rain. I could just imagine what was going through that poor child's mind. She was 13-year-old at the time, and I just could imagine how frightened she was that she was trapped in water, dirty water no less. I would have been so scared. I would have been screaming and crying beyond my wits, to be honest. And I heard she handled herself with great dignity. That is something that I could have never done, and I give her props for that. She's a very good child. By the time Foutier 40-year reached her, Sanchez had been exposed to the element for too long, and she began to float in and out of consciousness. "I am going to miss a year because I haven't been to school for 2 days," she told Tiempo reporter German Santi Maria, who was also at her side. Sanchez asked 48 to take her to school. She was worried she would be late, so she was having delusions that she was going to miss school, and I think that will be effect of being in the water too long, effect of hypothermia, I believe. Oh, poor child. The photographica, I can't even pronounce that word. I'm so sorry, guys. Please forgive me. Could feel her strength weaken. As if the teenager was ready to accept her fate, she asked volunteers to let her rest and bid her mother adios. 3 hours after, Fortier found her, Omayra Sanchez died. And this is the news report taken from New York Times. So it read, when she died at 9:45 a.m. today, she pitched backwards into the cold water. Her arm thrust out, and only her nose, mouth, and one ear remained above the surface. Someone then covered her and her aunt with a blue and white checkered tablecloth. Her mother, a nurse named Maria Aleda, received the news of her daughter's death during an interview with Calico Radio. She wept silently while radio host asked listeners to join in a moment of silence out of respect for the 13-year-old tragic death. Much like her daughter, Eladia showed strength and courage following her loss. It is horrible but we have to think about the living, Alida said. I'm going to repeat that last part because I think I've mispronounced the words wrong. It is horrible, but we have to think about the living, Alida said, referring to survivors like herself and her 12-year-old son, Armero Enrique, who lost a finger during the disaster. They were the only survivor from their families. Fortier later said, when he took the picture, I felt totally powerless in front of this little girl who was facing death with courage and dignity. Fortier remembered, I felt that the only thing I could do was to report properly and hope it would mobilize people to help the ones that have been rescued and have been saved. Fortier got his wish. The photograph of Omayra Sanchez, black-eyed, drenched and hanging on for her dear life, was published in Paris Match magazine a few days later. The haunting image won him in 1986 World Press Photo of the Year and elicited public outrage. Now, there are a lot of benefit that came from this tragic event because of the outcry and the aftermath and the outrage. The well-documented slow death of Omayra Sanchez confounded the world. How could a photojournalist just stand there and watch a 13-year-old girl die? That was many people's reaction. Fortier iconic photograph of Sanchez suffering was so disturbing that it spurred an international backlash against the Colombian government, practically non-existent rescue efforts. Witness accounts from volunteer rescue workers and journalists on the ground describing a grossly inadequate rescue operation that was really lacking in both leadership and resources. In Sanchez's case, rescuers did not have the equipment needed to save her. They didn't even have a water pump to drain the rising water around her. Later, it would be discovered that Omayra Sanchez's leg had been trapped by a brick door and her dead aunt's arm underneath the water. But even if they had figured out earlier, rescuers still didn't have the heavy equipment necessary to pull her out. Journalists at the scene reportedly saw only a few Red Cross volunteers and civil defense workers along with families and friends of victims ranking through the mud and rubble. None of the Colombian 100,000 person army or 65,000 member police force were dispatched to join the rescue efforts on the ground. So it was tragic. They did not have the proper material, nor were they aware that she was trapped and by a brick door, fell on her knees, because I believe she was kneeling down, and there was like a door preventing the people from lifting her, a brick door, and plus her dead aunt's arm were entangled around her legs. So two things was had her in like trap. But I hope you guys not enjoy but come aware of Omayra Sanchez, and that haunting photo was taken, and she changed the world. She made an outrage. It was very sad, a very sad story to read about, and a very sad thing to know about, but it is a part of history. And as I was said before in my previous podcast, that I would be doing a lot of history, like photos taken from the 20th century, and explaining its importance to society. And this is one of the photos that I'm really attached to because of the image. It was such a drastic image. It was portrayed. At first I thought the image was fake. I was like, no, that cannot be real. But apparently it's like blood pooled up in her eyes that gave her that black appearance, and since she was submerged in water, she was swollen. And unfortunately, it gave her this ghastly appearance. I pray for Omayra in that she is in a great place right now. She would have been an adult in her 50s, I believe, but she no longer is here with us anymore. And the saddest thing is that she bid her mother goodbye when she knew she was going to die. She came to terms with that she was going to die, and I think I would come to terms with that too as well, because after 3 days in the water, you just want some peace. You just want to have it over with. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I am Heather Harris. Bojo. I like to say Bojo. I hope you guys have a great, productive day. And always be safe. And goodbye. Goodbye, friends.